Welcome to week 2 of the Aftertalk, where each week we're going to be diving deeper into the sermon series of our love, sex, and marriage talks that we have titled Whole Heart. My name is Jayleen, and I'm joined by Pastor JJ and Pastor Liz, and we are so excited to talk to you guys today.
What's up? You guys did such a great job hosting yesterday. I'm sorry to cut you off. Not yesterday, last week. Such a great job. Love it.
Come on.
So great to be here.
Thank you. So excited. So the message this week is titled Red Flags and Green Lights. And whereas last week we talked about singleness, this week we're going to look at dating and marriage. And when red flags pop up, what to do with them. And then when green lights are telling you to go, how to deal with that as well. Did you know that 50% of marriages actually end in divorce? And we're going to do everything possible to help lower that number. So Pastor JJ, Pastor Liz, thank you guys for joining us. We're going to get into some questions here.
Let's do it.
So the second red flag that you talked about was how to fight in a healthy way.
Yes.
So what are some ways that you can fight in a healthy way?
That's good.
That's a really good question. So I think Stephen Covey wrote a great book in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, where he says, seek first to understand and then to be understood. So my number one advice when fighting in a relationship is try to understand the person first.
Right.
Everybody's always fighting to you got to get me, understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's really about seeing where they're coming from, because I think most of the fights come from this idea that that other person is crazy.
Yeah.
And like, it is hard. You're like, you're crazy. Why are you doing this? I don't understand why you're doing this. But the moment you take some time to actually ask them questions, hear them, understand them, then all of a sudden you realize they're a regular person just like you. And it gives you some rest. And then once you understand them, then you're like, all right, I think I get it. And then be an active listener. So, okay, so I think I get it. I think this is what you're saying. So you're mad because this happened. Is that right? Give them an opportunity to correct, adjust. And then you say, cool, well, I'm glad. So, hey, so now that you feel understood, can I tell you how I feel? And you ask me some questions to make sure, because that person might not have the conflict resolution skills that you have. So then you got to then show that by example. But Erwin McManus said something really good that I heard in a talk with him and his wife. He said, I'm not trying to win the argument. I'm trying to win you.
Yeah.
And I think that's so good. If there are no winners and losers of arguments. There's only understandings and misunderstandings. And we got to get the misunderstandings out, invest in the understanding, and then kind of move forward from there. And then when you understand, something that Pastor Liz and I always do at the end of it is, all right, so I like to believe that if there was a fight, most of the time it was 2 people who did something wrong. Right. It takes 2 to dance, it takes 2 to fight, 2 to argue. So what do I need to do differently next time? And then she'll say, what do I need to do differently next time? And
this doesn't happen again.
Our relationship years in has really been a culmination of a bunch of those conversations kind of ingrained into our subconscious over time.
We don't have those same problems.
So we don't have those same problems over and over again.
That's the big thing. Is like, because my thing is always like, I don't want to, I like new problems, fine. Yeah. But the same problem over and over again, we shouldn't. Because if we really understood each other and we came to a resolution, which sometimes has taken hours.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of humility, because when you're in it, you want like the other person to apologize. You want the other person to say things first. You got to kind of always be the first person to go up there and go, hey, my bad, I messed up, but let me understand what I did wrong and let me grab it more. There's always this funny story that I always like to share about the 2 brothers and the pancakes. Yes. Which is like, there was 2 brothers, they were fighting over the last pancake, and the mom walked into the room and she was like, you know, Jesus would let his brother have the pancake. And then one of the boys, like the other boys, was like, you be Jesus. You know? And I think they said expectation in relationship. You be Jesus. You say sorry. You understand. I'm just here to take. You just, and it's like, man, in a relationship, let's fight to be Jesus, to be the first one to go. He gave his life first. He came to earth first. We're in response to his love. So let's be Jesus in our relationships by going first.
I love that. Pastor Joey, one time, he said this a lot actually, that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And I think that's a reminder that even how God created our anatomy is to remind us that we're called to be listeners and to fight to understand. And so whenever I'm in that moment where I'm like, oh man, I don't feel understood, like, well, I'm not even taking the time to understand, so how do I expect the other?
And there's scriptural support for that in James when it talks about being angry and not being angry. The solution to overcoming angry, it says quick to listen, slow to speak. So there's scriptural support for that same approach, being an understander, a listener, and that's really how you resolve it. It's not one person trying to win, another person trying to lose. It's 2 people trying to understand each other. If you switch that goal, if you switch that goal, my goal's not to win, my goal's to understand, and us understand each other, every fight ends in a healthy way.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's not me versus you. It's us against the problem.
Exactly.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's a great way of putting it.
It's really good.
You talked about in your 3 flags, red flags. The last one you talked about was looking for patterns rather than potential. And as I was sitting there, I thought to myself, I could hear someone in the audience thinking, well, I just support his dreams. I just support his goals. I just really believe in him.
Yeah.
So what would you say is the difference between believing in someone's dreams, believing in their goals, versus just seeing potential?
That's a great question. I mean, I can believe in someone's. That's not really I guess you got to believe in that person. You want to be attached to somebody who you think has potential, for sure. You want to be attached to somebody who dreams big and has ambition and wants to accomplish big things. But the question for me, if I'm dating somebody, is not do they have potential? It's are we compatible?
Yeah.
That's a bigger deal than potential.
Yeah.
Because potential works 2 ways. There's good potential and there's bad potential. And if you get with somebody who's not compatible, then that has the potential to be something bad.
Right.
So yeah, I'm glad that you're talented. I'm glad that you're gifted. I'm glad that you seem like someone who can accomplish a lot. First off, let me look at your path. What have you accomplished up to this point?
Yeah.
So that's another
that's
thing.
good.
So it's like we love entrepreneurs. But has any of them worked? Like we have to talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah.
You can't be I'm an entrepreneur. I got dreams. Like, do you have one of them? Just one of them.
Right.
Give me something to believe in here.
Yeah.
Or do you have a business plan?
Yeah.
Right.
Like, show me that. You know what I mean? Like, you were just sharing
That's
a
good.
really cool story about Colin Farrell's office every day.
Every single day.
For a year to try and
was on
speak to
it.
him when you were starting the clothing brand. We were off the camera talking about
I was
that.
17.
And like, if I'm looking for somebody to spend the rest of my life with, maybe this person didn't get a hold of him, but I want to be with somebody
Who's persistent?
who's
Yeah, he
persistent,
tried.
Yeah.
who's consistent, who's trying.
Yeah.
But don't tell me you're living, in the basement of your mom's house and you're not even trying.
Right.
You're not even trying. I got to pick up on that pattern. I
Yep.
can't believe that I'm going to be the catalyst for your growth.
Right.
I can't believe that. And I think that's what a lot of people think. I'm going to be the thing that changes that person. I'm like, bro, if Jesus isn't enough to change that person, you are not enough
Yeah.
to change that person. So,
And failure's okay.
Yes.
Like, I think I
Right.
failed 7 times before anything was successful.
Really?
But it's that persistence and being
Yeah.
consistent with just your entire life. If you can learn how to be consistent and that's what your history is based off of,
That's good.
I think then it's like, okay, you can move forward with
which
that.
is what we're really talking about when we're talking about patterns. We're talking about patterns in their character.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking for. So, man, the business never took off, but I never gave up.
Right.
Exactly.
So I'm looking for someone, because then that person might hit it big and then do it great. So that's awesome. But yeah, I'm not looking for the potential of their skill. I'm looking at the pattern of their character, and I'm not looking for potential dreams. I'm looking for potential character. And that's the problem. When I start to see potential in their character, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When I start to see potential in their character, that's when it's a big red flag. Getting together is not about finding the potential in their character. The character is who they are. And so that's,
Yeah, no, that's good. I remember when we were dating, and I saw that in you. Like, you were just persistent in everything that you did. So you were a director of an internship program, and, like, I just saw him, like, anything he did it well. Like, he did it with excellence. And so I remember when we started the church, and we actually got into this building, and I remember there was times where he was like, I don't know if we could fill this. And I'm like, no, I see it. Like, because I knew, obviously, the call of God in our lives, but just, you're so persistent. This is just bound to happen. Like, but it's true. It's that. But also sometimes patterns and the things that they do maybe negatively. Like, what are some of the things they do? You talked about, like, how they talk to their mom, you know, how like, that's going to end up showing up in your relationship when you're dating and when you're married. Like, yeah, there's potential. Maybe they could change, but are you going to be okay with that? Like, what if they never change?
Yeah.
Are you okay with that pattern? Like, is that...
and you have to answer
That's
that
real.
question. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're fine.
Now you got to answer that question, because when I was looking at you, I was like, okay, it's 2 businesses, working on a college degree. Like, this is a hard worker. I needed hard work to be a character in the person that I was going to be with, because I knew whatever we were going to build, it was
Right.
going to be hard
Yes.
to do. But then there were also some patterns of some character things that was not so great. And the question I had to ask myself was, am I okay with those character patterns?
Yes.
Because nobody is perfect.
Exactly.
And so you're not looking for a perfect person to marry, to get with for the rest of your life, because you're not going to find them. I always like to joke, like on that first date, it's more like, all right, what kind of crazy are you?
Yeah, and am I okay with that crazy?
We all got some kind of crazy.
Right.
So what kind of crazy are you? Because am I okay with that? And for you, it was you're very strong-willed, very passionate.
The way I speak.
Borderline, can be rough.
Yes.
And you have disrespect. You can be disrespectful sometimes, or have in the past. Much better now. But I remember dating you and seeing that.
Yeah.
And thinking, okay. And then I put it on the scale. I'm like, if she never changes, that's the magic word, y'all.
Yeah.
If she never changes, am I okay being talked to like that for the rest of our marriage?
Yeah.
And in Liz's case, at least for me, everything that she had going for her, everything that was blowing me away about her, everything that I loved about her, it outweighed that for me. Now, because she is connected to Jesus, she put that work in with Jesus. She is not the person that she was 16 years ago, but that was something that her and Jesus did. I was not a part of that, which is a whole nother thing when you try to force that person up to where you are or push that person up to a level. I never forget, we did a sermon illustration where we were talking about that early years, and then you were on the floor and I tried picking you up, and I was like, anytime you try and lift someone up, you could dislocate their shoulder. You can hurt them and pull them.
Right.
And you told me one time when we were married, you were like, I'm your wife, not your intern.
Yeah, because he was the director of an internship program. Yeah, he was trying to pull me up.
I was trying to like disciple her.
Yeah.
And God's like,
I'm not ready for that.
And here's what I understand. Husbands, God's not called you to disciple your wife. He's called you to love your wife.
Yeah.
They're a disciple of Christ.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's between Christ and them being discipled. Like, they're not a disciple of JJ. They're a disciple of Jesus.
That's really good.
So Jesus is going to be the one discipling her. My job is to protect her, provide for her, and love her. And I hope that some of those things get worked out. But if they never do, I signed up for this. And I wasn't going to complain about the things that I knew when I got with you. I signed up for it.
I knew you were messy, and I was.
I was messy and all those things.
But he changed too.
Yeah, I can't sit on the fact that you knew that.
Yeah.
I can't leave my socks on the floor and be like, you knew who I was when you came into my car. That was messy.
Thank
if
God.
I love you enough, I'm going to start wanting to change
That's
myself.
really good.
Yes, but you still have to get into the marriage knowing, like, okay, if they never change, am I okay with this?
Am I okay with this?
Am I okay with this pattern? Yeah.
You had brought up that verse from James, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ.
Yes.
Can you talk about what it means to have a reverence for Christ and what it means to submit to one another? And you said that that verse really helped your marriage.
Yeah, no.
Can you explain that story?
Yeah, so it's Ephesians chapter 5, verse 21, but it was James in the notes, but it was Ephesians.
My fault.
No, it's my fault. I had it wrong in the notes. It's Ephesians chapter 5, verse 21. Yeah, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. And so, there were times, like when we were about 8 years into marriage, we had it was the closest I'd ever gotten to divorce. And I've preached about it before. But we were coming back from New York.
No, we were in New York.
In New York for a Hillsong conference.
Yep.
And it was the year that we were going to launch the church.
Wow. Yep.
And 8 years, we were married 8 years. And I'll never forget 8 years because I started doing research on marriages. And so 8 years is when most marriages get divorced. 8 years. I don't know what it is about 8, but it was 8 in ours. And she wanted to take pictures with this camera and battery. I can't even remember, but it was stupid stuff.
Yeah.
But it was resonating on a deep level with me for some reason. And we talked about it afterwards. But I remember coming home for the first time ever in my life, thinking, I could see my life without Liz. And I could never have imagined it without her. And I knew that was an early first step as a red flag. And so I went on this process of serving and her for the next couple of weeks, months. But what made me trigger and fall that way and not that way was that we just decided early on divorce was not going to be a word that we threw out in our marriage, because the reason we were going to stay with one another was not just for one another, but for Christ, because we knew what pleases the Lord. We knew what God loves to see. And the reason why he's so passionate about marriage, by the way, and so anti-divorce is because it's an image of his relationship with us. Like, he never divorces us. That's a whole nother theological conversation about, can you lose your salvation or not? And I always tell people, you can forfeit it, but I don't think you lose it, because Jesus will always let you walk away from him.
Yeah.
but he will never walk away from you.
Yeah, that's right.
And so that he wants marriage to be that way.
Right.
I'm not walking away from you, but if you want to walk away from this, I get it. And so I wanted to have that kind of commitment to her and her to me. And so there's just been moments where, out of reverence for who Jesus is, even if I'm starting to lose a little reverence for Liz, and Liz is starting to lose a little reverence for JJ, out of reverence for who Jesus is, I gotta stay plugged in.
Yeah,
I gotta stay connected.
Yeah,
so powerful.
Yeah.
We're gonna move on to a time of questions from the audience, if that's all right. You want to go with the first one?
Yeah. So, Pastor Liz, this one is for you. Someone asked, should a Christian
For the record,
woman...
really quickly, we were told before starting, we want to hear more from Pastor Liz.
You talk too much. That's what they're saying.
So I talk too much. I'm sorry.
Which is funny because
for the rest of the podcast,
no, you don't have to do that.
No, honestly, I tell her all the time. She's one of the wisest people.
She is.
Which is
that
funny.
I know in my life. Her wisdom is off the charts. So I'm just glad I get to just enjoy this.
I'm the one that talks more at home too.
Go ahead. They got questions.
Okay, but you're gonna add to it too.
No, I'm just gonna listen. I'm gonna learn. I'm gonna grow.
Okay. Whatever.
Okay, ready? Should a Christian woman date traditionally or wait to be pursued? But I want to add, if someone is single listening to this right now, how do they even go about getting a date? Or maybe they're so busy, they're working, they're on their grind, and they don't, or they go to the gym, they just don't have enough time to go out socially. Is dating apps an option? Like, what do you think how someone should go about it without being impatient in their timing of what God has for them in their single season?
Wow. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't even know what traditionally means, to be honest. I mean, I don't know. Is it like just you only just wait for a guy to
casual,
pursue you
organically
and I think
while
the guy
you're out.
pursuing.
Right.
That's
Which,
true. Yeah.
I don't know if I'm the best person to ask that question to, because if you heard our story,
The truth is shame the devil.
I know. But I just think, okay, so like, I just, if to hear someone say they're too busy, I'm like, what do you mean? Like, if you're wanting to date someone, then you have to put yourself out there. Like, I talked about this once before, that like, men or women, like if you're wanting to date, you do have to get out there. I don't see anything wrong with dating apps. You just got to be really careful. I mean, I don't know much about dating apps because there was no dating apps when I might have got on a dating app if I had to. But
MySpace was the dating app.
That's how old we are.
You can page me.
Oh my God. I bet some people watching like, what even is that?
10 songs.
Yeah.
That's all I'm about.
Yeah, of course.
Jayleen, you know MySpace top 10 songs?
I remember MySpace, but I wasn't on it.
Oh, man. We'll send you our profile.
World.
Yeah.
But anyways, you have to put yourself out there. You don't want to be the only, like, men that you see is like the UPS driver or like your Uber Eats delivery person. Like, we have singles night, there's a reason for that. Shout out to singles night. Show up. Like, I feel like there's a balance because you don't want to be thirsty either. Like,
100%.
I put myself out there. Like, Pastor JJ doesn't say this part, but we actually met at a singles young adults conference. And it was called Singles.
I don't say it because you really emphasize the singles.
Because it was.
Make it sound like it was a speed dating conference.
No, it's just like what we're doing.
What she told me.
Coming up.
It's your singles night. It's
That's
good.
not
It's actually
No,
good for
it
a singles night. It's just like, it wasn't that.
It was basically like a singles night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was a whole conference.
Yeah.
That's what it was. Now, I would have met him anyways because he worked in ministry with my brother-in-law.
Oh,
It just so happened that that's where it was that we met.
Yeah.
But as far as traditionally, I mean, you have to put yourself out there, obviously, modestly. You don't want to be like, hey, but like I did. I'm not going to lie. When I walked into spaces, I was looking. Like, I was like, okay, let me see if there's any potential. It's like, you have to. But at the same time, let yourself be pursued. It's like, hey, I'm here. Like, at least let them know that you're there and then allow yourself to be pursued. But the reason why I say I don't know if I'm the best person to ask is because part of our story is that if you haven't heard our story, I sent on Valentine's Day, which is coming up, this is funny, I sent a mass text to all my friends saying Happy Heart Day, and then he texts me back. What did you say?
Make sure you spend it with someone who makes you smile. Because I was trying to figure out if she had a man.
Yeah.
So I
and he didn't know it was a text I sent to everybody.
I didn't know it was a mass text, though. I would have never replied if I knew it was a mass text.
But he replied,
it worked out.
There.
No, so he put himself out there, and he said, make sure you spend it with someone who makes you laugh. Which I replied, so when are you gonna come over to hang out?
Hey.
So like,
now when are you coming over to hang out? Hold on, time out.
What did I say?
When are you gonna come to Orlando?
Whoa.
You didn't say to hang out?
No, because that makes it sound,
Okay.
Well, again,
I don't
say
say
that.
hang out.
I'd have been red flag. You said to Orlando is what you said.
Sorry, I don't remember.
So you pursued.
So
me
with
a little bit.
modesty, don't say hang out. Apparently, I don't remember.
But I put myself out there.
there was interest before. Like when he responded to you, it wasn't just like a random you were responding to.
Right, but that's the thing. Like you want to be pursued, but at the same time, you still have to let people know, like I'm available.
Yeah,
so
that's important.
Like and so allow yourself to be pursued. But how can you be pursued if people don't know you're available?
Right.
That was literally what my sister told me too.
Yeah.
Because she was like, if you like JJ, you need to like show that you are available.
Right.
What does that mean? Just go to these events and be there and like.
I believe for sure in the guy pursuing the girl, but I don't think that means that the girl does not let the guy know that she's available. And I don't think there's anything wrong with the girl pursuing the guy either.
Yeah.
I think the bigger question is there only one person doing the pursuing? You know, I think that when you find somebody, there should be a duality.
Right.
You know, there should be a pursuing of each other. But and guys, I mean, I'm just talk to the guys. I think we need to step up a little bit, you know, and pursue in a respectful way.
Yes.
You know, where you treat women with respect, like they're daughters of God,
Right.
and sisters in Christ. But you gotta put yourself out there. Be afraid of rejection or not.
I keep saying modestly because I feel like the words "put yourself out there" is like, put it all. It's not put it all out there.
Like,
Rejection,
walk
as
around
painful as it
smile.
is,
That probably help.
And I guess like going to church events, like that's
Yeah.
the main, instead of like going to the bar, but being around people that you want to live
Small
with.
groups.
that's huge. Be
Yeah.
around the places where the kind of people you're looking to marry
good.
are at,
Right.
Yeah.
for sure.
And be open. Like, don't
Yeah.
bolt out when the event is done. Linger a little
Yes.
bit.
For
And not
sure.
even around maybe other men. Like, just be around women. And then
Yeah.
naturally, you'll just start meeting people that way. And
Right.
it has to be organic. It has to come natural. I think that's
Yeah.
when it'll be more
Which is
healthy.
something you always talk about is like just be on your path.
Right.
You know, if you're on the path that God has for you, and then allow that person to come on into the same path.
Yeah.
And you meet them.
Yeah.
Yeah, slow down, walk, don't rush, and then see who's there.
Yeah.
That's really good. Next question. How do you know the person you are dating is right for you, even if people say that they are not? That
Well,
goes to either of you.
I think it's a big red flag if everybody's saying that they're not. Now that could be for a variety of reasons, but I just think you got to ask why that is. If the people that you're hearing from are God-fearing people who are unbiased and love you, then I think that's something to be thought about. Like I would even the way that the question was phrased, like whoever wrote it, how do you know this person is for you if everyone says that they're not? You know, I'm surprised that the question was like, if everyone is saying that they're not for me, are they not? The question was written in the affirmative. And so the problem is that love can blind, love can be intoxicating. And so, you know, the Bible talks about intimacy having this effect of drunkenness on us, which is hilarious because when you're drunk, everybody looks great. You know, when you're drunk, and if you've been drunk, you know what I'm talking about. You're just like, I'm the most handsome person in the whole world. And you're at the club and you're like, she's beautiful, he's beautiful. So I think that this love really has this ability to alter someone's perception of another person. And so, like, check your heart is all I'm saying. Check your heart. If you're looking for ways to make the math work, that's a bad start. You can try your very best to be unbiased. I think that's why the Bible tells us to guard our heart, because God knows that if we don't guard it, then everything we do after that is going to be tainted by our bias. So you want to try to be as unbiased, as neutral as possible when evaluating a potential mate before the heart gets in. Because once the heart gets in, boy, is it hard. It's so hard to be able to see straight.
Yeah, I remember when we were dating, that's why, and you talked about it last week, that I was fasting and praying, and I had 3 signs because I had been in so many relationships that I did just that. I didn't guard my heart. that was why I kind of was even extreme. I'm like, don't even hold my hand. Don't hug me. Don't nothing. Like
6 months.
Yeah.
It took me to hold your hand.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I'm like, we need to just be friends because I really want to just get to know you. Because if my heart goes before that, then I'm, like the kids say, I'm locked in.
Yeah.
And it's a wrap. Like,
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah.
And that's what kept happening in my relationships. And so I was like, we need to take this slow, which wasn't even that slow, but it was just enough that I'm like, okay, I need to know for sure. And then that's why I prayed and fasted because he's like, this is it. Like, you're the one for me. Like,
Well, the courting process was very long.
Yeah.
Then the engagement process moved fast.
Right.
But like that was because of exactly that. Because
Yeah.
you waited so long
Right.
before your heart got involved to make
Yeah.
sure I was it.
Yeah.
Then once you knew I was it, that moved
No,
fast.
I was like
Yeah.
the
But
next.
it was 6 months without
Right.
holding your hand.
I was like the next. He seems upset about that stuff.
Extreme.
Because it was just like extreme measures because I kept doing the same things and I was getting the same results and I'm like, I'm done with that. The
You
next
know, you say that,
person-
but the most valuable treasures have the most extreme alarm systems.
Yeah.
Like you lock those things down behind
That's really good.
motion lasers, a moat with alligators, like the things that are
That's why you
super
felt you had to
valuable,
go
like
through all
the
that?
crown jewels,
Right.
just to go
Yeah.
see it. All the
Yeah,
stuff
that's
you had to
a
go
great
through.
perspective.
That's your heart. If that's your
Yeah.
heart, of course, then it
Yeah.
deserves all those barriers of protection.
Which I was just like the next person that the next boyfriend I have is going to be my husband. And then that's it. But that's why I prayed and fasted and asked God for 3 signs because I'm like, I'm going to guard my heart until then because I don't know if you are. And even he was telling me, like, we should get married. And I'm like, I don't know. God has to tell me that.
Yeah.
Like, I need to know for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good.
Next question is, where does the Bible say a man is a leader to his wife? How to look for this in dating?
Where does the Bible say a man is leader to his wife? So in Ephesians chapter 5, it talks about the husband's role as the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church. It's that same chapter 5 that talks about submitting to one another. And so our take on manly leadership in a home is that, yes, the husband is the leader of the home, but he is to be like Christ to the church. Well, Christ died for the church. And so that means that if you're going to be the leader to your spouse, your number one goal is to die for the spouse. In other words, yes, you are the tiebreaker. I like to call it tiebreaker. I want to say decision maker because if I do that, then I feel like I leave out the wife's voice in the conversation. So it's not like only thing that matters is what you think. As a leader, in a marriage or without a marriage, if you want to be a good leader, you listen to the people that you're leading. You
Yeah.
get their perspective on things. You get their feedback. Then when you take it, then you got to make the decision. And here's the kicker. Here's where the Christ and the sacrifice comes in. You make the decision, are you ready? That is best for your wife. That's where the whole submission leadership thing gets warped and perverted. My job to make the decision, but I have to make sure that every decision I make is in her best interest, that it's going to protect her, that it's going to provide for her. And sometimes, now that doesn't mean that because I'm making a decision in her best interest, that it's the decision that she wants.
Right.
Sometimes I'm making a decision
Yeah.
that she doesn't want me to make, but I promise her, and this is where she has to trust in me. I promise you might not agree, but I promise you I'm thinking of you
Right.
Yeah.
when I'm making this decision.
Yeah.
I promise you this is for your good.
Right.
This is what I believe God is leading me to do. How do you look for that in a man was the second part of that question?
In dating in general.
In dating? I think if I'm a guy, I'm looking for a woman that understands that dynamic. Because if we're both trying to lead, well, anything with two heads is a monster.
Yeah.
And so that's not going to work. And in Liz's case, she had trouble with submission, but she at least agreed to the play.
Yeah.
Like our talk
Which
was
you talked about
always
today in the sermon.
right. Our talk was always like, I know I'm supposed to submit, but it's just hard. And I'm like, well, I can work with that.
Right.
At least we got the same value
Yeah.
system here, value set.
Right.
I can work with that. At least we're on the same page. So find look for a woman who understands that biblically, and then on the girl side, look for the man who understands that biblically. That authority and leadership in that role does not mean that I follow blindly. You take me wherever you want to go. Right. No, but that you hear me, that you respect me, and that yes, you're the leader, but every decision you make is for my good. Right. And you can ask those questions, and those are just conversations that you have. Like that's the kind of dinner stuff you talk about. Maybe not on date 1, or date 2, but at some point in the dates, hey, what's your take on Ephesians 5? Like, how do you read it? How do you hear it? Here's how I read it. How do you read it? Right. And then you pick up, and make sure that person knows what they're saying is another thing, because they might just be saying what they think you want them to hear. So maybe it's best you go first, and you go first. What do you think about Ephesians 5? Right. I'll tell you what I think as soon as I hear what you think. Right. And so yeah.
But even when you're dating, if it's a woman, the kind of man that she's looking for is one that you want to follow. Like we've talked really about good. This before. Like really if that's what the Bible says, and people get upset about that, like a lot of women have come to me after service, maybe even the one that we talked about this, it's like, yeah, it's really hard, but when you're dating, you're essentially picking the person who you are willing to follow. Yeah. So when we were dating, I'm like, am I willing to follow him? Which kind of goes back to the patterns. Like, am I willing to follow the kind of person that has these patterns? Yeah. So you watch the person, how does he handle his finances? How is he with his family? How is he with his job? Does he give up when things are hard? Does he manage his finances well? You have to think about those things, because if you decide to have kids, how are you going to raise your family? All those things are so important. And so look at them not just, oh, does he make me laugh? Is he fun? Okay, how is he, picture him leading your home, and do you think that he's going to have your best interest in mind, and also does he make good decisions? So good. What does he do? So you're essentially picking the leader of your home. So at the end of the day, you talked about today in the sermon, you picked him. Yeah. So pick well.
Yeah, it says wives submit to your husbands, but also we live in a society where you get to pick the one that you submit to. So that's so good. Do you trust him enough? And have you seen him in enough scenarios to know that you can trust him in certain
and it's what the shift, what made it from hard to easy, which was really hard for me in the beginning, because like he said before, I had my own businesses. I was very independent. My attitude was I don't need a man to live my life. I was like, I have money in the bank. I'm ready to buy a house if I wanted to right now. I don't need you to do that.
Which is true. Which is true.
Right.
It's biblical. You don't need a man. Right.
Yeah. So I'm like, I don't really need you, but that was my attitude. Yeah. But then when we got married, I had to okay, now he's leading, which was really hard for me because I had been leading myself for so long. Yeah. But I think what helped me and what the shift happened was when I realized he has to die. And I'm like, that's harder than me submitting. And then not only that, I watched him in his decision making. Did he make his decisions frivolously, or was he praying when he made his decisions? So that at the end of the day, if I know he's praying whenever he made decisions, then if I don't trust his decision, I'm essentially saying I don't trust God. Yeah. Because he's asking God for what to do with our family. So if I don't trust him, I'm really not trusting God. Then I have my trust issue stem with God. So then I need to get back to that place. But if I'm trusting God, I'm trusting, okay, God led me to the right person, and I should trust his decision making because he's asking God.
Which is another thing. Do you trust their devotional life?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you trust their devotional life that you know that they're pursuing the Lord?
Right.
Yeah. You guys good going deep really quick with a question? Sure, okay, the next question is emotional abuse considered, according to the Bible, a yes for divorce?
I don't know. What do you think, Zach? I'm just playing. No, I don't want to laugh at that, but, but it's serious. But I wanted to see just Zach's face for a second, because it's a tough one. That's a really tough one. That's a really, really tough question. So we do know that abuse, the spirit of the abuse in the Old Testament, it revolves around protection and provision. So it's a tough one. I would say this. I would say emotional abuse has levels. And honestly, you're the only one who can determine where you are on that spectrum. There is a level, which is he said something mean to me, and I'm like, that's a very low level emotional abuse. He's not putting away the dishes. That's very low. I feel not seen. That's a very low level emotional abuse. And then there are, he berates me. He breaks things. He or she throws stuff out the window. It's nothing that happens to me, but he threatens me. He gaslights me over and over again. I think that there are levels to it. So it's hard. The question is a great question, and I sympathize with whoever it is that wrote it in, probably because you had experiences in it. I would say your default should be to fight for your marriage. Yeah. That should be your default. That should be what you should strive for. But yeah, if you're at a place where your mental health is like just consistently under fire, again, it can't be he was mean. I don't like the way he said it. No, like I think some check boxes are like, is there extreme shouting? Are there threats? Is there abusive name calling? Not just name, because sometimes we're gonna call names in marriage, but abusive name calling. And the line is kind of where you define it. But I think the safe answer, and for you, not for me, but for you, is I want to fight for my marriage. Right. And whatever I have to do to be able to do that, yeah. I want to do it. And then are you doing everything that you can to try?
You talked about growing in knowledge. And I feel like when you were preaching today, growing in knowledge isn't just like learning that person more, just you together, but also going to therapy. Growing in knowledge maybe could also mean, okay, we're bringing a therapist into this who can help us with the tools to better, getting back to the beginning, argue, like fight fair, to save the marriage.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a couple get divorced in ministry, Christians, and it was emotional abuse was the foundation, and the spouse in question, the one who ended up getting divorce filed against them, was breaking chairs, throwing furniture, shouting at the children. The children couldn't go to sleep at night because they were afraid that dad was going to do something crazy. You know, like we're talking about stuff like that. Yeah, so like if you're living in that kind of a place, then it is something that you should prayerfully, because that's why I love the yellow light analogy. Yeah. Proceed with caution. But if it's not like that, then I would just want to know more of your story. I'd love to sit down and and hear more of what it is. But then you should fight unless you can.
Well, that was all we had for the listener questions.
Really?
Yes.
That's good.
Thank you again, Pastor Jayleen and Pastor Luis,
for
your wisdom and your honesty. What can we look forward to for next week's sermon?
I do know what I'm preaching about next week.
Come on.
Last week I wouldn't know what I was preaching about this week, but I know what I'm preaching about next week. So next week is going to be the heart behind sex. Oof. So we're going to be talking about intimacy. We talk about sex every year, I think, just because it's such a topic that we're discussing. If you got teenagers, invite them, bring them. This is where you want them to hear about the topic. You can't let the world be the first to the table. Yeah. And it's gonna be it's gonna be a good one. We're talking about masturbation. We're gonna talk about a lot of things. So come through. Awesome. The Q&A is gonna be very interesting.
Yeah. After
next week,
this podcast. This podcast next week.
Yeah.
Very
interesting. We're gonna get into it.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow. Some red faces.
I was just gonna say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Aftertalk. We'll see you next week. Jayleen?
You can connect with us throughout the week on our app, JourneyORL, or you can go on Instagram at JourneyORL, and we would love to continue encouraging you and hearing your thoughts about the sermon and this podcast. But we will see you guys next week. Bye, everyone.